on this computer. Okay, and we are recording. Fantastic. Hello and welcome. The topic of today, let me move this. The topic of today is your gut, your skin, and you. Understanding the conversation between our skin and our digestive system. And it is hosted by me, Sarah Wight, and I'm here today at Ocean Rock Wellness. Just letting 2 more people in. Okay, so to get started, let's go through what we're going to talk about. So welcome. Again, my name is Sarah. I'm the nutritional therapist here at Ocean Rock Wellness. I work with many clients who come into Ocean Rock for prevention, just wanting to feel better, wanting to learn. We've got a lot of eager learners. But I will say that the majority of clients that come into Ocean Rock that I work with are looking for some gut support, as in they've got symptoms that I would put under the IBS category, which is anything that an IBS is kind of a set of symptoms. But we know that our digestion is more about more than just having some digestive symptoms. So today what we'll discuss, what is our gut? So we hear a lot about the word gut health, etc. So I want to tell you when I say the word gut, what that means, what I'm referring to. So we're going to go through a brief overview of our digestive tract and its role within the body. Common imbalances that we see. Strategies to feel better, improve function. Our skin, the largest organ. Many people don't know that our skin is in fact an organ. And skin supportive nutrients and anti-nutrients. I'm going to talk a lot about the gut-skin connection, which very interestingly, the broker in that I would call is the immune system. And so we'll talk about the relationship. And I think the more we know, the better it is to understand and then to want to apply some strategies. And then I have a case study from a client who began seeing me over a year ago, who checks in every once in a while, but we were able to resolve her hives. So that is a case study on hives and dysbiosis and how when she came to clinic, the process of that. So a bit of an overview. So when I say gut, what I'm talking about is basically our digestive system. And that for the purpose of today, and when I talk about digestion, it involves, digestion also involves the liver and the pancreas, etc. But what I'm talking is the route that food travels. That is digestion beginning in the mouth, down the esophagus, into the stomach, where it basically gets swished, food gets kind of processed. And I think of it a bit like a washing machine. I use a lot of analogies and diagrams, and I hope that's okay, but I'm a visual learner. So I felt that there are probably others in the crowd as well. But I think of the stomach a bit like a washing machine with our laundry. It gets kind of mixed around with lots of gastric juices and digestive enzymes. Then it will go into the small intestine, which is the inside here. The small intestine is in fact not small at all. It is incredibly long, but in terms of diameter, it's the smaller one. And that is where nutrient absorption happens. And then it goes into the large intestine, which is what we'll call also kind of the colon, the transverse colon. And basically this is the large intestine, but it's made up of different components. And we'll talk through that. So for the purpose, that's what, when I talk about gut health, that's what I'm talking about, mouth to bum and the transition of food throughout. Digestion involves other organs as well, but there we go. So this is actually a great picture or visualization because it's kind of like a bit of a machine, and we want it to be a well-oiled machine. Digestion and absorption, and this is part of the role of digestion, the way I break it down. Digestion and absorption. So digestion or breakdown happens in 2 parts, chemical and mechanical. That is the old, when our grandmas or grandfathers told us to chew our food 22 times. It actually matters. We don't want undigested food. That can be a little problematic down the line. So chewing food is mechanical. The chemical breakdown of food happens in our stomach with all those juices that get secreted and mixed, and the acids that help to break it down. And then in the stomach, enzymes and gastric juices will further break down food. Important components to make sure these are working: chewing food, slowing down, and using our senses to stimulate gastric juices. Digestion actually begins the moment we smell or see food. You know, when you maybe you're walking by, I will say KFC, Mr. Chicken, Ice Queen, and you smell the scent of like fried French fries, something like that, and it smells really good. Well, in actual fact, we start to secrete digestive juices kind of within our mouths at that point. And that is the first point of digestion. Modern day, so many of us are driving and eating. I think we're probably all kind of, I'd say, victims of eating at our desk or in a car or on the go. And we don't always allow our bodies to kind of do what they naturally would when it comes to mealtime, which is to feel and smell and things like that. So then we go on to nutrient absorption. From the stomach, it goes down into the small intestine, and that's where nutrient absorption happens. I think of our small intestine and where nutrients get absorbed is by these little things that look kind of like fingers, kind of like the coral fingers you see when you're snorkeling. Those coral fingers are called microvilli, and they absorb nutrients. We can't absorb those nutrients if sometimes we have conditions where there's been damage to the microvilli, or we often don't absorb nutrients if we have really bad bacterial overgrowth in our small intestine. And further, we don't absorb nutrients if we haven't broken the food down well enough into small particles, then they won't get absorbed there. Then in the large intestine is about 1.5 meters long. The role of the large intestine, I think, is not just to form stool, but that is kind of a stool does form and store within the large intestine, but that's where the last bit of water gets absorbed. So water begins to get absorbed from our food in the small intestine, and then the last about 20% of water absorption happens in our large intestine. But what also happens is kind of mineral absorption and electrolytes, which are really important. It's where we house our microbiome, which I'll discuss in a bit, but you've all probably heard of the word microbiome, probiotics, bacteria. So really our large intestine is also this big place where our immune system lies. In the large intestine, we also turn indigestible fiber into short chain fatty acids. Those short chain fatty acids feed beneficial bacteria, and they also support the epithelial cell lining, which is our barrier function. The other role of digestion and of our gut is elimination and detoxification. So what that means is, of course, we eat food, we process it. Our liver also processes a lot of stuff, and then it goes, we need to eliminate this stuff. We eliminate through our lymphatic system, we eliminate through urine, through bowel movements and feces and stool, and through sweat. So there's lots of channels of elimination. What's really important is that for kind of proper elimination and to avoid reabsorption of kind of toxins or byproducts is to have a bowel movement every day. So in actual fact, the whole idea of detoxification, which our body does naturally, but we can also support it. You would never want to start any sort of detoxification program if you were constipated or you weren't having a bowel movement every day. And I would say, again, I talk to a lot of clients daily about gut health. So a lot of the conversation is around kind of going to the bathroom, frequency, and things like that. We can tell a lot of our health through that. And then detoxification. So the role of digestion is kind of one of the steps that is necessary for elimination and detoxification. The other role of our digestive system, which is where the skin starts to come into play, is immunity and integrity. What that means is our digestive tract, which is basically, if you want to simplify it, is like one long pipe from our mouth to our bum. That is it's a protective mechanism to allow us to have exposure to the outside world through food and nutrients. So to bring things in from the outside world, but to protect it from entering into the rest of our body. So our digestive system is this big processing system that allows us to absorb nutrients and water, but also protects us from those things going into our bloodstream, impacting our organs, and it protects us from things like viruses and bacteria and pathogens that may be in the outside world and on food. So that's where kind of step one, stomach acid, it's very acidic, and that will often kill off a lot of bacteria. So it's this protective mechanism. I call it like an interface between our bodies and the outside world. It allows us to thrive using water and nutrients. So we can go days or weeks without food, but we can only go up to 3 days without water. We need it. It provides us protection. But what happens when that goes awry? What happens when that barrier function, that protective function between what's in our digestive tract and the rest of our body gets kind of breached or broken? And you can think of our digestive tract as like, security guards back to back. What we kind of think of is terms such as leaky gut or gut permeability. And that's what happens when that protective gut, when those security guards get a bit of a breach. So what I'd like to show you is this is the red here at the bottom here in this diagram is our bloodstream. So you can imagine those are red blood cells, things like that. What is up here is our we've eaten. So what's in our digestive tract. And these tight junctions are each cells, and they line to provide that junction support. What can happen because of gluten, bacteria, things like that, as well as stress. Those are the top 3 things that can cause leaky gut: stress, gluten or gluten overexposure, and bacteria. We can get little holes. Now, what I'll say is everyone has holes in our gut. Everyone has some degree of leaky gut, but that's the point that we want to know about, is the degree of leaky gut. So you can understand that this is kind of what we want. We want food, toxins, things to go through our digestive tract. But what we don't want over here on the right of the diagram is to have access for these things to enter into our bloodstream, because that's a barrier that's been breached, and that's where our immune system starts to get quite involved. And when it gets involved, it kind of goes into overdrive, I always talk about the immune system, and actually one of its main roles is deciding what is friend and what is foe. It's normal for our body to fight off kind of a stomach bug or a virus or something like that, but we don't want it responding inappropriately to things like strawberries or, developing allergies to kind of florals or things in our environment. But also the immune system can get quite confused, and I'll explain kind of why. So those are the roles. I'll go back. The roles that I see digestion predominantly are for digestion and absorption. They play a role, the digestive tract plays a role in elimination and detoxification. And then next is in immunity and integrity. And then what impacts our gut? So what can impact or kind of cause issues with the immunity, integrity, absorption, etc.? Stress, absolutely. Stress can make, one way stress impacts our gut is that when we're stressed, imagine you see a tiger and you get a surge of adrenaline. What happens is blood flow goes to our extremities to allow us to get out of that situation. But what it does is when it goes to our extremities, it removes itself from kind of non-essential functions that it needs, which it would be digestion. So if we have chronic stress and, our body doesn't know the difference between reading a scary email from our boss or a coworker and running from a tiger. So our body operates pretty under the same conditions. So stress can mean that blood flow isn't kind of functioning and supporting that digestive system. Transit time can slow down. When transit time slows down, it means that undigested food can become more stagnant, which is a kind of a breeding ground or opportunistic environment for bacteria to have an overgrowth. So stress, pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, refined foods, inflammatory foods, and those are the main things. as well as things like proton pump inhibitors and acid blockers. And the reason is that a long-term use of those things will bring down stomach acid. And stomach acid, to some degree, as we know, is important to help kill off bacteria and to break down food. I really like this picture. I think it's will make sense in a moment. So that's kind of an overview of digestion. It might seem a little complicated, but I think what we need to know is that our digestive system works very closely as with our immune system. But it's very easy for those things for these systems to get confused and imbalances to occur in modern day under stressful conditions where it doesn't have enough nutrients. So what I want to kind of mention next is our gut and the garden. And I use this analogy very often for many of my clients who come into clinic, and I'm kind of explaining what may be going on within their digestive system. And what we know is dysbiosis. So imagine a really gorgeous garden or a tropical rainforest. And that's what I think of as the microbiome in our large intestine, if you remember. So our large intestine, I like to think of this place where a lot of magical things can happen. Likewise, this is where kind of disease or symptoms can begin. So our microbiome is full of bacteria, yeast, and protozoa. Similar to a vegetable garden, we want species that support an ecosystem. So we want species that feed the bees, basil flowers feed the bees. We want things that smell good, like roses. Big trees that produce oxygen, chickpeas and beans, if you were to plant those, they would add nitrates back into the soil. So they really support it. But what we don't always want are weeds or invasive and opportunistic species, vines that grow into our cement homes. Think Mexican peppers and all of those. So weeds and Mexican peppers is not what we want. One, they're invasive and they can take over. And two, they can cause problems. Say you have a vine growing up the side of your house, it's then going to grow maybe into your cement concrete. So I use these visuals. We don't want them there, but they can thrive if the environment is set up for them to. So if we're stressed, if we're not digesting food well, and there's lots of undigested food particles, and if we're eating very refined foods and sugars, what inevitably is going to happen is we're going to feed those opportunistic kind of bacteria and yeast species, candida, etc. So if we think of this garden, we think, how do we support the bees and how do we support growing basil and all of those things? When it comes to our gut, that is basically following a very whole foods diet, addressing our stress as well and not eating when we're stressed. And so lessons that I like to take away from a gardener's perspective, but that apply to digestion and gut health. Build a fence around your garden, which means have that barrier function, support your epithelial cell lining, and know that those epithelial cells, or that wall between our what's in our digestive tract and what is in our bloodstream, that's very important. So build a fence, nurture your soil, which is on the preventative side. Fertilize with organic nutrients. So feed your beneficial bacteria and your microbiome with fiber, phytonutrients, fruits and veggies, diversity, textures. But what these beneficial bacteria really love are definitely fibers. So vegetables, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, fruits, proteins are important. Provide enough water, and I'm going to mention water in a moment. We know that plants to thrive need water. Neglect is never good because it can often lead to an overgrowth of weeds. Patience and trust in the process. When I see clients with dysbiosis, or we identify that they have an overgrowth of maybe yeast and bacteria, and we take a whole foods approach, I always give them a very realistic timeline of symptom reduction and then kind of rebuilding our digestive system in terms of rebuilding the beneficial bacteria. Some people expect results in a week, and yes, we may start to see results, but patience and trust is very important. And I would say anywhere from 1 month up to a year is kind of the amount of time that I work with people. Everyone's garden is different. Observe, learn, and be intuitive. What I do know is over the years, we often take on a lot of, this worked for a friend. So, that must mean something. Keto, do this, go low carb, take these vitamins. We take on a lot of these health claims, but they may not be right for us. A lot of what nutritional therapy is figuring out what is right for us from a biochemical perspective or a bio-individuality perspective. And following intuition is really important. If you eat something and it doesn't sit well with you, know that that's okay, and there's probably a reason for it, and it's important to honor that. But so much of what the health world tells us to do is to follow someone else's rules and not follow our own intuition. And that's one of my big points in Nutrition Clinic, is providing education, doing some functional testing, which allows patients to see what's going on in their own guts, looking at what their deficiencies are, that is very different from what the outside world is telling us. Stressful seasons can have a knock-on effect. So I think we know for farmers that a very bad season of weather, very dry season, etc., can have a knock-on effect for the following season, which means if you have a very stressful season, whether that is trauma, you've had loss, maybe it's financial stress, maybe it's relationship stress, maybe it's COVID or world stress, anything like that, that can have a knock-on effect. And to be very, to know that that's kind of okay, and to, so stressful seasons can have a knock-on effect. Prevention and care build resiliency. A note on that, someone might come into clinic and they may be very sensitive to certain foods, even healthy foods. The idea is the more we focus on building up our beneficial bacteria and strengthening our gut, often the more resilient and the more we can tolerate as well. It's easier to nurture a garden when you see it in its entirety. So what I mean by that is when it comes to our gut health, understanding that, okay, here we go, providing fresh air, fuel for the bees, and to be able to reap its benefits for years and generations to come. If you knew that your gut health was a foundation for disease prevention, for optimal health, whether you knew that that was also going to impact future generations, you might approach it a little differently. The more we listen, the more we learn and listen, the better we can adapt to the seasons. I really like to take the confusion out of the health world and what people know. And a lot of the time when people come into clinic, they have a lot of questions and I like to answer them. And the reason is I think when we start to answer and figuring out what is useful for us and what is not, we can kind of pare back and then follow kind of our intuition strategies and know that each season is different. And maybe 1 month you feel this and you're eating this way, but know that maybe the following year, 2 years later, your body's actually craving and needing different nutrients, whether it's a season of your life, or whether it's a season from a hormonal perspective for women. Being able to adapt is really important. So that is digestion and a bit about digestion. And again, the role today, I think, was to provide a lot of information, but also to pique curiosity to both maybe come into clinic, but start to understand that your body is very unique. So skin, our largest organ. I really like this picture and I'll tell you why. We have so many bacteria and things on our skin, but I think we think it's a very sterile environment. So really, this is what we look like right now. I think that's kind of funny. Our skin is part of a system that includes hair and nails too. Our skin is, or the organ, our skin is part of the, can't even pronounce this, integumentary system. Our skin is very beneficial. Some of the roles of our skin, temperature control. So you will get goosebumps or when you're cold, and you'll sweat when you're hot. And that is our skin allowing us to find some sort of kind of balance. So our skin is really important for temperature control. It's really important for absorption. And I'll say a few things on that. One, we can absorb and synthesize vitamin D when it touches our skin. That will be different for different skin pigmentations. So it's really, our skin is important for nutrient absorption, such as vitamin D, but it's also a fantastic way to get nutrients in, such as magnesium. And that's through taking like an Epsom salt bath or putting on kind of magnesium transdermally. Transdermally means to absorb through the skin. So transdermal absorption is something that we look at for magnesium. So it plays a fantastic role there. Anything you put on your skin, they say, can get absorbed in 26 seconds, and that will go into your bloodstream. At the same time, our skin absorbs anti-nutrients. And what would that be? That would be radiation, pollution, chemicals, whether it's lotion and kind of things like that. Sweat and elimination. So our skin is a route of detoxification and elimination. Our skin, very much like our digestive tract, has a protective mechanism. It's protecting us. It's got an interface between what's kind of under our skin and the environment. So a very strong similarity between our skin and our digestive tracts. They are the two systems or organs that protect us from the outside world. The other role of our skin is to be a host of another microbiome, which is our skin microbiome. So we can have our gut microbiome and our skin microbiome. And understandably, they speak to each other, and they've got kind of like a bit of a flirtatious play. Specifics that I wanted to talk about, which I did mention actually, was vitamin D. We absorb that. Depending on melanin and pigmentation, vitamin D is important for kind of supplementation, especially during the winter, but you should know your levels, so test before you guess. And then magnesium. We are often very deficient in magnesium, and what we want is kind of cellular magnesium levels. Magnesium, you can take supplement, you can also eat lots of leafy greens, and you can absorb it through your skin. Okay, we've got to round up. What does the skin need? Nutrients and hydration. What I will say is two things. This on the right is this diagram on the right here, I hope you can see it, is what I found on a Harvard website. And that is how they describe a hydrated cell versus a dehydrated cell, and why we need to be optimally hydrated and not dehydrated. The visual I like is to say a grape versus a raisin. If we want cells to come in, stay in, but waste to not come in or to eliminate metabolites, we need it to be hydrated. We need our cells to look like grapes, not like raisins. And I think that alone is enough for some clients to start to drink more water and to know why hydration is so important. Nutrients for skin health, I've listed a few here, and again, you will get this recording, so I hope you can look through this. But knowing that you can get nutrients for skin health through each season, and there's seasonally appropriate ways to do that. And lastly, the gut-skin connection, and what I kind of wanted to mention. So defense mechanisms and barrier against foreign ingested and environmental invaders. So both of them work against these kind of what we call foreign invaders for our immune system. So they provide protection and also an interface level for our immune system. Both are lined with epithelial cells that create this barrier. Both need raw materials to function well. Our immune system needs raw materials, but they're both impacted by stress, blood flow, anti-nutrients, genetics, and environment. I'm going to move this over. When the immune system in our GI tract responds, as in if there's an inflammatory response in our GI tract, inflammatory pathways are activated. It's hard to figure out what that would look like or what that means. So the example I like to use with inflammation is if you were to get a cut, it would start to swell. And what that means is your immune system is kind of using kind of things to come, white blood cells, etc., to come to the surface. So what we know is that, and that, I think, if anything, shows you that there's a response. There's some sort of response for healing. There's some level of inflammation in the GI tract as well. The role of the immune system is to decipher what is to respond to and what not to. And you can probably understand at this point that there's a lot of factors affecting it, but they both have a role, and that is protection. And when that, if if there's anything that's, if they don't have the nutrients to protect as they should, or to be those kind of that protective mechanism, and if there's a lot of things that are impacting their ability to defend and protect and to function really well, we can start to present with some skin issues. What we often find is when people come into clinic for skin issues, and that would be acne, it would be hives, eczema, psoriasis, athlete's foot, we call it Bermuda rot, things like that. It often begins in the gut. So when someone comes in with these things, I start to work on their gut health, and then we start to see improvements in skin. Of course, we work on nutrients and that sort of thing as well. So I wanted to talk a bit about a case study. I'm running a little short on time, so I may circle back. Just some research if anyone wanted to look at these articles. My top 10 tips for gut and skin health, but also this is from a preventative capacity. Eat a diverse diet, focusing on whole foods and colors. For higher nutrient intake, grow your own foods or find a local supplier. So there's lots of farm stands on a Saturday morning. Watson's is open through the week. Or grow your own, share with neighbors. Avoid packaged foods. Hydrate with water. Follow the seasons and learn about the seasons. Don't eat when you're stressed, and learn to support your nervous system. Our nervous system can allow us to be really resilient to stressful situations. If you don't feel right, you may need support. Prevention is important. If you've got IBS symptoms, or if you experience kind of chronic symptoms, it's important to reach out and to find a practitioner who can support you. Join the Nutrition Reset. I can be your practitioner. Move and sweat. Support your immune system with joint connection. Those are really important. Grow an herb garden. I think that's a really easy step to be able to flavor food. Check in with your anti-nutrients. So, I think I say sometimes, my vice is French fries and coffee, but then I start to list and I've got like a lot of vices. So know that sometimes maybe doing a bit of an intake. How much alcohol do you drink? Caffeine, sugar, how stressed are you? How many supplements or pharmaceuticals are you on, etc. Those would be my 10 top tips. Join the Nutrition Reset. What is that? It's a one-to-one program that I offer. It's 5 consultations. The first one is usually an hour because we talk a lot about lifestyle. So it's over a period of 2 to 3 months, depending on how much support someone needs. We can do functional testing that's covered by major medical as needed and only when needed. And that is gut testing, micronutrient, and food sensitivity. We can do body comps. It includes email access, documents, brand recognition. There's a lot of learning and educating that goes beyond just the consultations, but I provide lots of support throughout that time. And my goal is when you come in and you have kind of goals or symptoms, that we are able to retest or resolve them and have a better understanding by the end, and you're feeling good. There's different costs depending on who your insurer is. There's fantastic coverage with BFNM and Colonial, and the copay is usually 150 to 200 depending. For Argus, they have no coverage, or GEI-CHI, and those without insurance. So the full cost of the Nutrition Reset is 600. If you have questions or you would like to sign up, please contact us, 295-5100. And then lastly, thanks for joining today. I know it's a lot of information, and I almost wish this could be a 3-hour session, but simple, and for the purpose of today, I just wanted to ignite a bit of a fire or a passion for learning and understanding more about yourself, your gut, and your skin. If you have any questions, please let me know. Contact the front desk, and I can send you an email. Have a great day, everyone.